philosophic thought I had early in life is just like, well, nobody's responsible for my outcomes except for me. The video you're about to watch is just a small segment from a much longer and more in-depth interview that's included inside my new digital program, The 10 Commandments of Wealth. Click that link and get your name on the 10 Commandments of Wealth early action guest list. When you do, you'll secure your invitation to a private and live webcast discussion with me. You'll also become eligible to get your copy of the 10 Commandments of Wealth 10 days early. Click that link, get your ass on the webcast. I'll see you inside. Today I get the chance to sit down with Apolo Ohno. We're going to have a chat about success, about winning, about what it takes to really get things done. And Apolo, he had 8 Olympic medals, 2 gold, 2 silver, 4 bronze. That's 8 more than I have. He won countless championships. I've seen a lot of other non-Olympic gold on your Wikipedia. And if I'm not mistaken, you have the most medals of any Winter Olympian, is that right?
Any male U.S. Winter Olympian, yeah.
1 extra qualifier in there. Still sounds pretty dope. Still 8 more than I'll ever have. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat with us.
Yeah, man, it's nice to meet you. Good to hang.
Thanks. We were kind of having a chat already off camera of some of the dark places a person has to go to get things done in the real world. That it's not always happy. People say I want to be motivated, or people say to me they confuse it about 3.5 million on Instagram at the moment, and a few other channels that are decent sized. And say motivational speaker I don't want any clients that I have to motivate. I think about that with my clients. I don't want to work with anybody that I have to motivate them. If they're not internally motivated to get something done, I can't bet on that person to win versus numerous other people that are, when they're not motivated, they're at least disciplined to go do what's necessary to have the outcomes they have in mind. What are your thoughts on this motivation versus discipline, or any other angle that you might have on that topic?
I have a lot of thoughts about that. I think first and foremost, everyone's different, right? I think 2, motivation's important. Obviously, discipline is what you can lean on when your motivation fades. Every Olympic athlete will tell you that they're motivated, but a 4-year journey is a long time. Sometimes an 8-year journey is a long time. When your race only lasts, 40 seconds long or a minute and a half long, but you're training, all day, every day for years with no real sight in terms of, is the metric of me hitting that bullseye getting more clear and better? And you get some level of guidance, but I think that motivation is important, man. When I retired 12 years ago, and this is what we were talking about off camera, I think there was a part of me that believed that you could have this very holistic, kind of wholesome approach towards success. And I think that's still somewhat true, but I think in terms of the extreme environments where, and you hear people say I'm sick and tired of basically either putting excuses for myself or pointing to other people for failures versus saying what can I and how can I accept responsibility. And culturally, we've seen this kind of change too, where now there's these 2 dichotomies of approaches, right? One is, you kind of got the Jocko approach where extreme ownership. Everything that I touch, I'm going to accept responsibility for. Even if I don't touch it, I'm going to accept responsibility for that. And there's the other side that kind of pushes everything off to everyone else. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, with kind of a tendency to always just have the weight on your own back, right? Kind of like Sisyphus, so to speak. So I think, it's hard to kind of pinpoint everyone. There's no real blueprint for success. I think there's similarities in everyone's path. And what we were saying off camera is I think probably one of the reasons why you've had so much success is you just deliver a lot of stuff to people that they typically don't maybe don't want to say to themselves. And it kind of rings this bell to say hey, I know this already, but it's time for me to come to terms with saying yes, was my childhood messed up? Was this hard? Am I missing some of the pieces? Maybe I don't have all the cards or the people are dealt. These are all just they're effectively just excuses, right? And there's other people in the world who have been given significantly less, who have been less genetically designed for success, or just had every single odd stacked against them that have won. And so there's so many stories like that from all over the world, from our country, from others. And I have always looked at that as kind of inspiration. So because I think it's easy to get into this like victimized mindset because culturally we allow that to happen sometimes.
I think everybody's soft today. My grandmother on my dad's side was tougher than most of what passes for a man today.
It's different.
My grandmother was tougher. My grandmother was tough. She worked in a factory. Her brother died in the war, of course, and all these World War II era stories. And her family left Poland, and the family that stayed in Poland didn't work out good for them.
Yeah.
And she lost her. She was working in a bomb making. She worked in a factory that made clocks, so then it was repurposed to make timing devices for bombs. So she was involved in production of bombs for the war. And she had her finger caught in a hydraulic press and lost, about a third of her finger. And she was very proud of that. And she never cried about, I never heard any whiny, cryy, no, obviously I seen her, decades after this happened when she was grandma. She was a young woman when this happened to her. But she was always proud of that as an old woman, that it was like her Purple Heart or her sacrifice that, her family and others made. And, today, if any emotional inconvenience that a young man might meet, he might just give up. It's somebody else's fault.
Yeah, I think there's there's a lot of truth in that, right? I think there's also, like in the U.S., I'd like to think that we're becoming a more evolved society, and with that comes a whole set of comforts that typically 50 years ago we didn't have, right? Just the abundance of food, the abundance of access, the abundance of capital. All these things are, and they will make you very comfortable, right? And so when you don't have certain things in your life, you don't have to struggle. But the biggest growth comes from those struggles and those periods. And so I think it's up to us now in this new era to figure out, how do I continue to keep sharpening my own sword in my own way? And if you feel like the world is stacked against you and you're just getting no's, and that's enough friction in itself. But I don't know, man, it's like, without getting too philosophical, I had a talk with a friend of mine the other day, because we both like to read history, and we're kind of looking at the U.S. and where the U.S. is in comparison to the rest of the world, right? You've kind of got China as a superpower, you've got the U.S. here, a lot of kind of geopolitical conflict, and part of it's, a lot of times, even more recently, most of us don't see war unless we're in the military, right? It's just not shown to us in certain ways, and so we as a society, we're not taking over other continents anymore. That psychology doesn't exist in our world. And so we're doing it through software, right? The way that people are communicating and kind of conquering, so to speak, in business is a different place than it was, I think, many, many years ago. And so soft is it's an interesting word to say. I think that I think people in general, like my father, for example, came to this country, didn't have a single dollar to his name. He didn't speak a word of English in a time when, Japanese people were not probably the most accepted in this country. And he struggled, right? And he still struggled. Doesn't make a lot of money, but he takes a lot of pride and ownership in that. And I always think about that, in my first world problems when I'm complaining about something. I'm oh shit, my dad, he actually doesn't even want that much. He just wants to survive, And so it's a lot to be earned and learned from, I think, our ancestry. I just get scared sometimes to think about the future generation of where this is potentially going if we don't retain some of those really strong skill sets of perseverance, grit, mindset. And sometimes that stuff is not the most pleasant, right? The place you have to go to psychologically can be really deeply painful. And everyone has their own trauma in their life. And I think that you can either allow that to paralyze you in a certain perspective, or you can use that as a catalyst to just metabolize, and you just keep eating that. And that is a driving force. And that's fine. That's totally cool, right? As long as you know that this is happening.
The majority of my audience, and something very close to 100% of my clients, are people that they've already done a couple tough things in life. Maybe they went to college, maybe they were a military person, but they already did something at a moderately high level. And some of them are exceptional. One of my clients is an Olympic swimmer. Numerous people that have athletic backgrounds or military backgrounds, or they did some pretty tough things in life. I'd say the universal thought that I'd say almost every client has is somebody that they want to come work with me or be around the other clients to have an environment where we're talking about reality. We're not talking about whimsical nonsense of we're going to have these fantastic outcomes without making the effort.
Yeah.
And just for a philosophic thought that I had. If I took 2 extra classes, I would have had a bachelor's in philosophy to go with my business degree. So when you said, not to be too philosophic, but I kind of think that way. But anyway, philosophic thought I had early in life is just like, nobody's responsible for my outcomes except for me. And my mommy can't make my life as an adult. My daddy's not going to make my life as an adult. And I had that thought, but by my mid-teenage years, like nobody's responsible for my outcomes except for me. And then I had a lot of negative emotions about that because I was working hard, but I was kind of a little angry about it a lot of the time, which is not necessarily a bad thing all the time. But, I thought about that a little more deeply. I'm like, you know what? Nobody's responsible for my emotions except for me either. So if I'm in a sour mood, who the hell's fault is that? Is that, is the universe conspired against me, or should I just change my attitude about something? And that helped me a lot. That for the things that I took very seriously, and I wanted to work diligently at, and I have a bit of an obsessive personality, which I'm certain that you do to do what you've done. That has to be true. So for me to focus and obsess on something, I'm like, well, if you already made the decision that you're going to do the thing, then you might as well be in the best possible mood while you do the thing. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that I was damn near 30 by the time I really internalized that thought, and I thought, you were really a lot angrier than you needed to be for like more than a decade.
I think that happens to people in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah, and I was probably 28, 29 by the time I really internalized that and could behave that way day to day. That I'm like, well, you're going to do the thing anyway, so you might as well be in the best possible mood while you're doing it.
Yep.
And that really freed up a lot more mental energy and felt more rested, if you will. I had more energy in general to contribute or to continue compounding towards the goals that I had, So you must have had experiences like this.
I look at anger as it's nitrous. You can't use it all the time. Use it all the time, you burn out. And you basically punch yourself out. Used in very strategic moments of time when you really need it, and hopefully not direct that at other people, it's really powerful, just like every other emotion, right? But it has to be kind of reeled in at the same time. I think the most powerful of all the things that we need are some kind of semblance of like purpose, and that purpose can be your family. Your purpose can be like your own deciding, this is my true north, I need to make a name for myself, this is what I believe that I deserve in my life. Whatever the purpose is, I think remaining committed to that path is really, really important, because we live in a world filled with so much distraction, and this person's doing this person has this project, this person made this much, this channel's making this much, all these things distracting you away from the ultimate goal of what you're doing. And it's okay to hear these things as long as they're kind of guidance and tools to help you understand what the competition is. But at the end of the day, you're really just steering yourself in this trajectory to say, like, I'm going in this direction, and I know I need to stay committed to this path. I can make small calibrated movements, and I can recalibrate at times, but I need to stay on this path because this is the way. Because if you keep going like this, you're basically just zigzagging up the mountain, and that's going to take you a long time when you can just go like this, right? And I think that's something that my dad told me a long time ago, right? Is he's like, look, if you do something, you can't always control what the outcome is going to be. You will absolutely fail multiple times in your life, in terms of like that result of not getting what you think that you deserve, that you want. However, that process of you doing so is the most important thing. And so the prize is there. I talk about this and other things, like how do you focus so much on the process to understand that even if you fall short of what that prize or that metric or that goal was, you're so geared up and ready for the next one, it doesn't even matter. It's just a chapter. Boom, flip the page, start writing again. So if you fail fast. Extract the knowledge from that as much as possible, learn to pivot, and go down the next road in your life. I've had so many failures, both in sport and out of sport. And I've always said, like, one of my favorite poems/quotes is good timber, right? It's just like good timber does not grow with ease. The greater wind, the greater trees, right? So the stronger wind, the stronger trees. And so that mindset to me of like the scars that we accrue over time can be very powerful to us.
Well, let's talk on that for a second. This idea that
easy is for everybody, I don't want easy. I want difficult, And then when it's difficult, then is it good. But easy stuff that just comes makes you soft,
Derek Moneyberg presents The 10 Commandments of Wealth. In my adult life, I haven't been afraid of asking for help, all through people who are kicking ass and doing it. Not through books necessarily, not through these things, but through people who are actually living it.
20 interviews from the clients, 10 training modules, the 10 commandments of wealth, the 10 things that you must know to create some wealth. Champion interviews, champion after champion after champion.
The best fighters in the world. Even as an amateur, as a teenager, I was already sparring with, championship level fighters. And
I think we'll get along really well because we have the same mentality as I'm very hard to trust someone.
Your life's already paid for. Why do you go out of your way to make a relationship with me and go through these mentoring courses?
When I first heard about your course and it became available, for me it was a God-given opportunity. I actually felt very, very blessed.
You can't help people who don't want to be helped. So we only want to be around the ones that want to be helped. Most people didn't inherit the wealth, and those who are at a higher level and see someone like grinding and wanting to get up in life, we'll help you up as long as you want to be helped.
Can you be a good investor if you can't read the quarterly statements, annual statements?
It's impossible. How do you know what you're investing in? How do you know what stock you're buying? How do you know what it's worth if you can't read those financial reports?
I made more this last year than I've ever made in a given calendar year.
The Moneyberg programs helped me to increase my entrepreneurial income by 349% from 2020 to 2021. Furthermore, the real estate riches increased my rental income by 33%.